Hello and welcome to episode 168 of the Ego Chall Podcast. My name is Preston Byers, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Justin Binkowski. And on today's episode, we are talking about RECKS, officially confirmed joining the Carolina Royal Ravens, something that we talked about on the last episode. We also have a bunch of big and very important matches going on in the final week of the Major 3 qualifiers in the Call of Duty League. But before we get to any of that, how you doing, Bink?
All right, like you said, not a ton to talk about today, really. We just got the roster confirmation, which we were talking about last episode, and at least I wasn't too convinced that we were going to have the move confirmed by the time we did this show, but here we are. We actually got the news confirmed for once, so that's good. And then, this is the last week of qualifiers before Major 3 next week. And there's, as we've talked about the last couple of weeks, there's only 5 matches for each team, so there's a lot of implications on the line for who starts in winner bracket, who starts in losers at the major, and all that stuff. With literally these matches could be the difference between some teams making champs and some teams not. So it's getting down to the nitty gritty, and I'm ready to dive right in.
The first thing that we want to talk about on the show is RECKS. Of course, we talked about him potentially joining Carolina. We had the reports on Sunday, but now that it is official, we do want to further the conversation. I would prefer not to rehash what we talked about. Of course, we talked a little bit at length about him potentially joining the team, but really I want to talk about what success would look like for the Carolina Royal Ravens with this change. Vivid, he contributed a lot to this team. This team is in a completely different situation than I certainly thought they would be at this point in the season. However, it is clear, at least from the past month to 2 months, that they have not been able to compete against the big dogs, against the top 4 teams. And now they're making this change to hopefully raise the ceiling of this team. So I want to ask you, Bink, with that being said, what does adding RECKS to the Carolina Royal Ravens roster, what does success look like for Carolina as they move forward?
I think the big thing for me, well, I guess we can look at this in 2 ways, individually, kind of like you said, we've talked about this last episode. There's that meter that I've been talking about for new players coming into the league, and talked about Neptune being on one end of the spectrum and Lunars being on the other so far this season. So where RECKS is going to fall in that conversation individually is going to be a huge, just talking point around this move, around whether this move works for Carolina, whether RECKS has a future in the CDL and seasons to come, all that stuff. But for Carolina as a team, I just think the biggest thing for him is going to be providing, a little bit more consistent slaying than possibly Vivid did in some of the respawns. I feel like I said it last episode. He's joining a team that is one of the best, if not the best, search team in the league. I think statistically they've said on the broadcast that Carolina's search win percentage is the highest. And I said last episode, Vivid is you can't take anything away from Vivid in the search department, just because he's a really good search player in my mind. So he definitely contributed to Carolina's stature in search so far this year. But RECKS is joining a team with guys like Slasher and TJ who are, very good search players themselves. And Slasher in particular has his method and style of search and destroy, where RECKS joining this team, he should be able to, lead him and put him in the positions to succeed, put him in the positions he wants him to be in for the team to succeed. And I guess I wasn't really thinking about it from this way until I just started talking, but you can say, as much as you want to see Carolina improve in hard points by bringing RECKS into the lineup, because I think that's been the roller coaster of Carolina being good and being bad and hard point throughout this season. Just it's been up and down for them all year. If RECKS joins this team and their search gets worse, which could happen when you make a roster change, what does the future look like for this Ravens team? We've seen it on other teams where, they bring someone in and Surge gets worse, but the hard points gets better, so they can still win series. It just looks different. They're winning like 3-1 series instead of going to game fives and clutching up in those game fives. So that's where I'll be paying attention. I definitely want to see what kind of impacts RECKS has for Carolina in the respawns, but also on the flip side of that, I want to make sure he isn't, causing a big drop off in the search. And I don't know enough about RECKS as a player to know his history in search or anything like that. So like if he's some old school search star that I wasn't familiar with, then this is obviously a moot point. But for lack of having another way to phrase it, yeah, like he can join this team and have an immediate impact. And Carolina's already had an event this year where they made it to a championship Sunday. They got fourth at Major 1, and notably that's when Vivid had like the issue with his eye and everything. So they're playing with the one-eyed Raven, as they were calling him. Miles coined it. And if they can get fourth place with a guy dealing with that situation, even though Vivid was playing pretty well statistically at the event despite the circumstances, I think that's got to be the goal for this team. Now it is going to be tough with limited practice heading into Major 3, but I'll say due to their position in the CDL point standings and everything, if this move for RECKS joining Carolina is to be a success in my eyes, it would result in them making Championship Sunday at Major 4, having a good performance in the Major 4 qualifiers. I'm not going to immediately throw out this Major 3 cycle with RECKS, but they have only have one match remaining. It's against LA Thieves, a team that Carolina has struggled against all year, even without RECKS. So I am expecting him to be 0-1 with Carolina heading into Major 3, wherever they fall in the bracket and whatnot. I mean, it would obviously suck if for Carolina if they just fall out in the top 12 finish at Major 3. But again, I think we kind of hashed this out last episode too. It's like this is a move you make at this time as opposed to before the Major 3 qualifiers if you're thinking ahead and trying to think, does making a roster move here put us in a better position to potentially compete for the championship at champs versus the short-term return of trying to win Major 3 with the roster that you've made a championship Sunday with. So I think it's gonna, a lot to look forward to with this team. I feel like the other thing that really RECKS, I guess he could influence in some capacity, but just because of his, presumed role as that flex AR, I don't know how much of an impact he'll have, but the other conversation really for Carolina has been Gwyn translating his results and superb play online to the LAN events. So that's something we got to keep an eye on with Carolina overall, because then, I mean, how are we going to be able to judge RECKS's performance going forward if Carolina just struggles on LAN because their star player isn't producing the results they're used to and producing online when they're playing at these majors. So definitely an interesting move. I'm excited. I feel like the writing's been on the wall for Vivid, unfortunately, for a while now. I think RECKS getting a chance here is good for him. He's just got to seize it and show us what he's capable of. And if he's able to be that like 1-2 slaying punch with Gwyn for an SMG AR duo, and then Slasher and TJ can do their thing. And I mean, they both, Slasher and TJ, have had monster performances at different times this year, even in respawns. So like if they can all put it together at the same time, this could be an interesting team. We did talk last episode too about Carolina struggling against the other top teams. So that, I guess, could be another way to evaluate this change going forward. Again, it'll be unfair to evaluate RECKS's performance or just this roster move based on one match against LA Thieves. But if they do look more competitive this weekend than they did in all of their previous matches against LA Thieves, which in fairness shouldn't be that hard. They've been 100-point clubbed at least 3 times that I can remember off the top of my head. that'll be something to keep an eye on. But yeah, a lot to look forward to really with this team. The more I've been talking about it, the more excited I am for to seeing how this plays out.
This roster change is unlike what LAG did, and they made multiple changes at different times to hopefully get out of the basement of the CDL. It's completely different for Carolina. They're nowhere near the basement. They would seem, I can't say for certain, but it would seem like they will clinch a spot at champs relatively easily. But this is a change to go higher than that. They've slid to 5th place. They're, I believe, 5 points behind Vancouver Surge now, and 15 points behind Toronto. So they're not too far behind, but if they did not make a change, it felt like they might continue to slide back or not be able to climb the ladder anymore and be stuck in 5th. And who knows what happens with OpTic. OpTic is always kind of lingering. If they can string wins together, then they're a very scary team to be in front of. That being said, I did want to point out one thing in particular with this move in Carolina as a team, because and I wasn't really thinking about this, but you did bring up the conversation about their hard point kind of being hit or miss a little bit, and that being a prohibiting factor, so to speak, for their success. But I certainly wasn't expecting this. So in totality this season, Carolina is about 7th place in hardpoint overall. But then when you look at their LAN statistics, that win percentage drops down to 33.3%. So they're only winning about a third of their hardpoint maps. And so if you're just kind of using your logic, if they're winning a little bit over half of their hardpoints in total, that's including online and LAN, but only winning a third of their hardpoint maps on LAN, then that means that they have a very high hardpoint win percentage online, and that is true. They are 4th in hardpoint in the CDL. They've won 59% of their hardpoint maps online, which kind of breeds the onliner conversation that is had about Gwyn, right or wrong. I think it would be unfair to point all of the blame at Gwyn or all of the blame at Vivid. Of course, it's a 4-man team, so a lot of blame can go a lot of different ways, but it's kind of a team issue when your win percentage drops from 59% to 33% just from kind of the venue that you're playing from. And just looking at their online numbers, the only teams that they're behind in hardpoint is FaZe, LAT, and Vancouver. And of course, Vancouver's probably even higher if you're just looking at the Neptune roster than previously when they were kind of struggling. So Carolina is not in a great place in hardpoint on LAN, which is partially probably because they're playing a lot of very tough teams. They're playing LAT, they're playing Atlanta, they're playing Vancouver, because they've been in the winners bracket so much. That lends itself to playing the best teams, and they don't really get to maybe farm the victories in the losers bracket against some of the lesser opponents. But I did think that was interesting because especially there isn't that kind of drop off when you're looking at them in S&D or control. They're in S&D in totality this season, their S&D is the best in the entire league. They're winning over 64% of their search and destroy maps, and that's including online and offline. Online, they're in 3rd place, but they're only behind by 1 percentage point behind LAT and Toronto, but they're still winning about 63% of their S&D maps. And then if you look at their LAN search and destroys, they have even improved that win percentage up to 66.7%. So they're winning 2/3 of their searches, which is second behind only. And I don't know if you know this, but Atlanta FaZe this season on LAN has won 91.7% of their search and destroy maps, which would, essentially mean that they're winning 10 out of 11 maps. I don't know exactly what the number is, but it is kind of led them to this point where they've won both majors, and combined with them being one of, if not the best hardpoint team and a very strong control team as well, that is a reason why they've won both majors and why a team like Carolina is looking for something else, looking for another player to figure out where they go from here and how to improve and get to that level or close to that level that Atlanta FaZe is at when they get to land. So I do think that RECKS, I hope that RECKS can change the fortunes of this team, especially in hardpoint. But it is kind of a slippery slope, and it is sometimes you have those trade-offs where just because you improve on hardpoint does not mean that you stay the same or you get better in the other two game modes. So if they were able to improve that win percentage to even 40, 45, 50%, it's going to be very difficult, I would imagine, especially if they keep playing these winner bracket teams. It's going to be tough for them to beat Atlanta FaZe and Toronto and LAT at that 66.7% clip in S&D, or even do something similar in control. So I hope that RECKS has that success. I hope that he's able to make that kind of impact, because if he does, this team is very, very dangerous, and it could have a Neptune-sized impact if he could get them to even 50% win percentage in hardpoint.
Well, that is an important way to look at it, but also I knew they played them at least once, but I just checked. In both majors this year, Carolina's first round losers bracket match was against Vegas Falcons, and notably it's against the all-Saudi Vegas Falcons at both of those events. So they essentially got a free map win in every mode twice against those two teams, and that's on land. So, I mean, you could take 2 hardpoint wins away from them if you really wanted to, and that puts them in an even worse position against you said 30 something percent. If you take 2 hardpoint wins away, they're probably I wouldn't be surprised if it was like a 2-12 record on land this year or something like that.
Something else that you put in the notes here, and I don't think you know how valid it is. I certainly don't know the validity of it. But JoeDeceives, according to a few tweets, is a potential target for OpTic Texas's roster for the 2025-26 season. And like I said, the validity, I guess, is I don't think it's really the point. I do think the point is, would JoeDeceives be a good fit? And what do you think about this? Because these conversations are certainly happening behind the scenes at OpTic Texas. Of course, if they are able to go on this run at the end of the season, they will keep that roster and they'll try to find a way to make this current roster work. But certainly I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that you think that's going to happen. I think that's a long shot for most people at this point. So they're definitely thinking about who could be a good fit for this team, and we don't really know what the team would look like, I guess is the biggest point. We talked about in the past whether Shotzi and Dashy would want to continue to be with OpTic if they're not competitive consistently. But just looking at JoeDeceives, what do you think about JoeDeceives potentially being a target and bringing that fast-paced style to OpTic Texas?
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with this stuff. I mean, just based on a couple tweets, really, that are suggesting that, something might be happening. And, I really, the one tweet I saw was from Ace ZVR. There's another one from from Pleb CZN that kind of said, I think that second one from Pleb was more of a meme, and that's what I was kind of I put in our notes. At least it felt like it was a bit of a meme, at least. And the only reason I even bring it up is that Beans and Insight played into it a little bit, at least as far as I can see without much further context, because Beans posts the "So Long Partner" Toy Story Woody GIF, and then Insight tweets at JoeDeceives, "It's been a pleasure," and that was both within 15 minutes. So I just thought that was funny. End of the day, I mean, the way Toronto has done business in the past couple of off seasons and really in totality of the CDL is they've allowed their players to explore their options after the season. Now, JoeDeceives might be a rare case where, especially if these talks start to heat up, or if there weren't even any talks and they just start to happen in any uh, sense of the word, then maybe Toronto decides to hang on to him. But I mean, we even saw just this past season, like they let Kleenex and Insight, and obviously they let Scrap and Envoy too, but they let the team from last year become restricted free agents, go out there, test the market, explore their options, and in the end, Scrap and Envoy leave, but Insight and Kleenex came back. So there is a world where if maybe they don't win a title this year, Toronto is willing to move on from JoeDeceives, but I feel like, especially lately, I feel like he's been really the bright spot on that Toronto team. He's had multiple moments where he's just absolutely popping off, and it's kind of a cool story. I know he doesn't like the moniker of it, but JoeDeceives, when he first breaks into the scene, he becomes known as like that ranked play kid from what was before MW2. I'm already forgetting, but
A Vanguard?
I don't think. Yeah, it would have been Vanguard, I think. He was friends with Abizi and really broke out and became known as like that rank play guy who was just frying in rank play, and then he gets his shot on some other teams over the last years, and really he had his opportunity, but really I wouldn't say like he really started to show what he was capable of until the end of last season with LA Thieves, when they had those back-to-back top 3 finishes at Champs and EWC. And this year has just been, building off of the end of last season. So I really do think JoeDeceives in an interesting position. I mean, if I'm him right now, whether this is true or not, I gotta be. I'm playing into it. I'm like, yeah, it's true. Like, OpTic wants me. I'm gonna shop that around all the other teams too, and be like, oh, you hear OpTic wants me? Like, do you guys want me too? How much you willing to pay? And maybe a little NIL transfer portal negotiating skills here, but yeah, in all seriousness, we don't know if there is even a slight sliver of validity to this. I just thought it was funny that at least Beans and Insight were playing into it, and it'll be probably more something we'll look towards after the season concludes this year. Because I do think this Toronto team, obviously they've had the online issues this stage during these Major 3 qualifiers, but that the record speaks for themselves. They've been playing pretty good COD, and JoeDeceives has been a big part of that. So will be interesting to see what the future holds for him. And obviously, he's still a really young kid, and his future is incredibly bright in the CDL, in my opinion, regardless of what team it's on.
Let's get into the predictions portion of this show. We obviously are ending the Major 3 qualifiers this weekend, starting on Friday, April 18th. The Toronto Ultra will play the very red-hot Miami Heretics at the moment. I'm going to go with the Toronto Ultra, but I certainly understand anybody that would pick the Heretics right now.
And I'm going to be one of them. I'm hopping on the Vamos train and going with Miami. I just think both teams have been hot, like you said, so this really could go either way. I think probably if we're looking at the previous iteration of Miami and both teams were in the same position, I would lean towards Toronto, but I really think this Miami team is different with the addition of Super. Toronto was a really good search team earlier in the season. They're still, I think they're second when they talk on broadcast about the search stats with them in Carolina. So they're still a good search team. But I just think Super has played really well in search. So I'm interested to see how that matchup works out. So I'll go Miami here. This should just be a really good match either way, though.
Boston versus C9. I'm going to go with the Breach, but I think this could pretty much go either way.
Yeah, I mean, I've been picking against Boston for a bit now, so I'll take C9 here. Get some variety in these matches early on, so I like that a little bit. But yeah, this is an interesting one, just in the sense of, both of these teams in the grand scheme of things are trying to, solidify their place for champs. Obviously, Cloud9 in ninth place, and Boston is in that group tied at 130 CDL points for 6th, 7th, 8th. So, a win here by Boston makes the gap between them and C9 much bigger. But a win here from Cloud9 puts them basically one match away from being tied with Boston almost. The 5 points skews that. But, a big point. This is a big match for qualifier standings for this major and in the grand scheme of the season. So, it'll be interesting to see how it works out, but I'll take C9 here.
And the final match on Friday, LA Thieves versus LA Gorillas Mate. I really want to pick LAG, but I am going to pick LAT.
I got to pick LAT too, but it's definitely, I don't have the number here. I know we said it whenever they played earlier this season. This Battle of LA has been LAG dominated since LAT joined the CDL. I believe the last time we looked at it, it was LAT were 3-9 against LAG, and I think LAT won this year. So I think they're 4-9. That exact number might not be right, but it is somewhere in that vicinity. Even if it's not remotely close for whatever reason, I'm misremembering it. LAG have definitely won this rivalry matchup more than LAT have so far early in the CDL history, but I do not expect that trend to continue here.
Saturday, April 19th, Vancouver Surge versus C9. I'm going to go with Vancouver.
Yeah, I'll take Vancouver too. Definitely a match that, again, just looking at where the teams are in the standings, it's one that means a little bit more for Cloud9. Depending on how that Boston match goes, they could be in a position where they have to win this match to have a shot at winners bracket. Whereas Vancouver, already have 3 wins, and they should be in the winners bracket for Major 3 at this point. So technically, this match doesn't mean as much to Vancouver as C9. That could be a way for C9 to sneak in a win here, but Vancouver is the better team, so I'll pick them.
Miami versus Minnesota. I didn't pick the Heretics in the first match, but I will pick them here.
And I was all about Minnesota last week, didn't work out for me, and that means I got to pick Miami here, which means I'm picking Miami to go 2-0, which means they won't go 2-0, but I'll still do it.
Toronto versus LAG, I'm going with Toronto.
Yep, tough break for the LAG boys, but I think Toronto takes this one too.
And the last match on Saturday, Vegas versus Atlanta. Vegas, for the first time all season, first time since the Falcons organization entered the CDL, have the opportunity to create a win streak. They won their last match, of course, against OpTic Texas. I do not believe that it's going to happen here. I'm going with the Atlanta phase.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pick Atlanta here too. Definitely a match where you have to think a little bit more than previously. Like, you see Atlanta versus Vegas. When it's the All Saudi project, you're just not even thinking about it for even a split second. But with Vegas coming off that win, you got to think about it for at least a fraction of a second. Both teams are 1-2 in these qualifiers. FaZe with a 6 and 7 map count, and Vegas with a 5 and 7 map count. So, not going to say they've been the same team so far in these qualifiers, but statistically it's been pretty close. But I think, Atlanta's got some big matches this weekend, and they definitely don't want to start in the loser bracket for, I assume, would be the first time in organization history. So I'm expecting them to come out on fire this weekend and take care of business here.
Sunday, April 20th, Easter Sunday, Boston versus Vegas. I will go with Boston. I don't think it's a shoo-in for either team. They even Vegas has, they lost to Minnesota, which was certainly a very winnable series. Boston has had these matches where it would seem like they're probably not the favorite, but they somehow win. And this is more of a toss-up than some of the series that they've won. So I'm going to go with the Breach.
Yeah, I will go with Vegas here. If Boston lose both matches this week to Cloud9 and Vegas, they would be 2-3. If Vegas go 1-1 this weekend, as I would predict here, that would mean they would be 2-3. If OpTic lose their match, they would be 2-3. If Carolina lose their match, they would be 2-3. So needless to say, there is a scenario where multiple teams could be 2-3, then we get tiebreakers, and that's part of what's going to happen here when there's 5 qualifier matches versus 7. So I'm picking Vegas here to try and, at least in my mind, pick for the chaos and see what happens for the tiebreakers, because especially with these next 2 matches coming up, if Vegas wins this one and everything plays out where there are 4 or 5 teams at 2 and 3, chaos could ensue.
Yeah, and this is one of the bigger chaotic matches, I guess. Atlanta versus OpTic. Atlanta, let's say they lose to Vegas, then they're 1 and 3 going into this match, and really have the chance to finish either last or very close to last in these qualifier standings. Same for OpTic, to be honest. OpTic started very well. Obviously, they can't finish 1 and 4, but they certainly could finish 2 and 3, like you're saying. And I'm going to go with FaZe, but I think this is a very interesting series for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, I'm going to take FaZe over OpTic too. I just spaced out a little bit there because I saw something else we can talk about after this, but I don't know, how many times have we seen OpTic versus FaZe this year?
Like maybe 2 or 3.
I don't even know if it's been that many, but obviously it's different rosters and everything, so it doesn't really matter. OpTic's been the better team. I think
FaZe has been the better team.
Yeah, I don't even know. My head's now. I'm all. Well, this is chalked, but okay. Rewind tape here. FaZe been the better team. FaZe should win this match. This is especially, like I said, if FaZe beat Vegas heading into this match, FaZe and OpTic would both be 2 and 2. That means the winner of this match would be 3 and 2 and basically guaranteed winners bracket at Major 3, and the loser would be 2 and 3 and have to rely on tiebreakers to try and get one of the bottom spots in the winners bracket. So I'll take Atlanta here, but should be a good match, hopefully. We'll have to wait and see.
And the final match of these qualifiers and the final match of the weekend, Carolina versus LAT, something we've already talked about a little bit on this show. I'm going to go with LAT. Obviously, Carolina's had a really, really hard time even being competitive with the Thieves so far this season. And I just don't think with a new roster, let's say they had 5 days of practice, I just don't know if that's going to be enough. Granted, LAT has not always been at their top level, especially online, but I still am going with the Thieves here.
Yeah, gotta go with Thieves. We'll be excited to see RECKS' debut, as we talked about earlier. But this is a match Thieves have dominated when they had Vivid in the lineup. I don't know how much just RECKS joining this team and having a week of practice is really going to change that. So I'm gonna have to stick with LA Thieves here. Should be a good way to end the qualifiers, though. We get a taste of what RECKS is capable of, even if it's a small dose. And then right after that, we'll have our bracket and be ready to head to Miami.
In the pick'em so far this season, you are 105 and 57, and I am 102 and 60. Was there something else that you wanted to talk about before we get out of here?
I just saw Breaking Point tweeted 5 minutes ago. Asim's 12-year-old brother Youssef, I'm assuming that's how you said it, played with Methods in an Enable 10K tournament online. I know Methods was playing with Fatty, that part of the Meal Team 6. It's some sort of content creator tournament, and notable Ego Chall correspondent Tremi was the one who DM'd me saying that Fatty and Methods won. But Breaking Point just tweeted that Asim's 12-year-old brother was on Methods' team for that. And in the clip that they have, I believe he's 43 and 28 on a red card hardpoint that they're showing. So the unfortunate thing there about him being 12 years old is he's got to wait at least 6 years for to make his debut in either Challengers or the CDL. But that's going to be a name to keep an eye on now for, if the CDL's around in 2031. Keep that name Youssef in the back of your mind.
Yeah, some people are saying he's 13, but I don't think that matters all that much. Still, 2030, 2031, it's going to be a while. We're all going to be dust by 2030, probably literally as well. But yeah, I mean, the new era of COD players, like we really haven't gotten that many of them, because it feels like even like Hydra, I guess, is in maybe a different era than maybe Simp is, but still, I think it's more similar. There are now kids like Yusuf, who, I mean, they have been around since competitive Call of Duty was like relatively mainstream, because he would have been born in like what 2012, 2013.
I was just gonna say he was born in COD 4 and World at War and Black Ops 1. Those games were released before he was
Yeah.
even born. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, so like some kids that are really good, I'm sure, but can't compete. They've been alive in like the COD champs era of COD esports, which is pretty crazy to think about. That makes me feel very, very old because that's when I started getting into competitive COD. So I'm gonna need this to stop. I'm gonna need these kids to be banned from the internet for at least 5 to 6 years, and then it won't make me feel too bad. But yeah, there's going to be a bunch of these kids, I'm sure, that are, I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they're just going to go into Warzone and just fry for 6 years and kind of bide their time, play wagers in the meantime, or play ranked play. I don't know. Like the bad part about this is like he does not have like the same setup as like even his brother did. And I mean, that's kind of sad. Like a lot of these kids would have just been S&D grinders for 5-6 years. Like something we talked about, with Blast on the last episode, how he's now transitioning to Warzone, or he has been in Warzone, but he's now on 100 Thieves. But he was like, one of those kids, like he was literally a kid playing S&D against pro players and just absolutely dog walking some of them. So that just doesn't exist on the same plane as it used to. And that's unfortunate, but at least there is something like this that gives Yusuf or any other child, like literal child, a chance to shine in this way. That's why we need more like open bracket events and, us to take the age gap down. Like, I don't think it really matters. Like the 18-year-old thing, I understand why it is in place. At the same point, though, like Call of Duty and a lot of other esports, some of those kids are very, very good and like probably pro level by the time they're 15, 16 years old. We've seen Kenny and TJ and Temp and a lot of these, Simp obviously was Simp Salam, all those guys that were on the EU cadets. Like the whole reason that they were even on that team was because they could not legally compete in the CDL. So we need something to kind of maybe like a high school league. I don't know what the solution is, but I think it would be cool to see more of kids like this just fry on like a really big stage. But yeah, that about does it, I think. I'm sorry if there are any technical difficulties while you're listening or watching this. We did not even know until like 25 minutes in. Though if there are no technical difficulties, just ignore this and that means I did some magic in the end. But please like, subscribe, or follow the podcast feed wherever you're listening or watching on. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitch. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please follow the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Ego Chall Podcast. You can also follow Bink on Twitch, twitch.tv/JBink with 2Ks. And you can also follow both of us on Twitter at JBink with 2Ks, at Pres Byers, and the podcaster is at Ego Chall Podcast. We will be back this weekend to talk about the final week of the Major 3 qualifiers, and we will have a pretty clear idea of who is starting in the Major 3 winner bracket and who is not. And with the tiebreakers that Bink was just talking about, that could be a very, very painful way to start in the losers bracket for some of those teams. But yeah, we'll be back on Sunday, April 20th, Easter Sunday night, to talk about all the matches and whatever might have happened between right now and Sunday night. That does it for me. Bink, take it away.
Yeah, thank you guys as always for all the support. Shout out Fame Paid and the YouTube channel for at least letting us know about the technical stuff going on with the mic. And, like Preston said, hopefully he works his magic and we sound like idiots talking right now because nothing happened on your end. But otherwise, hope you are able to bear with us through this episode. a shorter one nonetheless, not as much to talk about. But yeah, final week of Major 3 qualifiers. Next week, we're into Major 3 itself. And then right after that, we start the Major 4 qualifiers right away. So really heating up, getting into the nitty gritty of the season. I'm really pumped up about it. And yeah, can't wait to break it all down for you once we know what happens this weekend. So looking forward to the next show. We'll see you guys then. And remember to send the chow.